welcome to episode 316 of Late Night Linux, recorded on the 13th of January 2025. I'm Joe, and with me are Félim.
Evening.
Graham.
Hello.
And Will.
Hello.
2025. Let's get straight on with the news then. And the first piece of news is that Graham cheated and already has a point.
I must admit, I was completely ignorant about this new Steam Deck clone.
So this is the Lenovo Legion Go S, and it is the first handheld gaming device that will ship with SteamOS. That's not made by Valve, of course. But there will be a Windows version, which will be first, and it'll be later on this year when we get the SteamOS version, because they have to work on all the integrations and everything.
And I bet it'll be great. The Windows one, I mean.
Yeah, it'll be amazing.
Lenovo have got a good track record of enabling Linux drivers and the Linux kernel, so I don't doubt that the Linux version will work correctly. And also, they've got some great people at Steam working on it as well. So it's a shame that it's not coming out at the same time. I mean, it's even more of a shame it's not coming out first or only, but I'll take it. And this is, I think, a good sign and a good indicator about the way things are going.
I think it's good for a couple of reasons. Firstly, Lenovo producing a Linux handheld gaming machine, and also it's forcing Valve to probably fix SteamOS in ways they may not if they just kept it to their own hardware.
Well, that's the other part of this story, is that they're going to release a beta of SteamOS in April, which you'll then be able to install on other handhelds and potentially just desktop PCs.
That's really exciting, because I guess it means, because this Lenovo is Ryzen Z2, which Valve have just denied it'll be in a Steam Deck too, but it'll be interesting to see the NVIDIA support that they hopefully provide. I know that there's been leaks that NVIDIA support has been added to SteamOS, but it's nice to see it in action.
The specs on that Go, are they much different to what you've got in your Steam Deck?
That's the latest generation of the platform, so I'm assuming the APU would be a lot faster. But then the screen, it's like a 1080p screen, I think.
Yeah, and it's a high refresh rate as well.
Yeah. So I'm not sure what the effect will be. I'm sad that it's not OLED.
Battery's probably going to last half as much.
Yeah. So I'm not massively interested in it. I like the form factor. I don't notice that it's 720p on the Steam Deck. If I want a bigger resolution, I'd plug it into the TV. But I assume, yes, on paper, it's probably a lot more powerful.
But the Steam Deck being 720p means that you can get more frames per second, can't you, out of higher-end games?
Yeah, and the screen's small and you don't really notice it. With decent anti-aliasing and DLSS and all the tricks. I was saying that, recently that Cyberpunk runs, 30 FPS, but you don't notice it a foot away from you on this handheld device.
And there's no reason that you couldn't drop the resolution down to 720 and perhaps get another half an hour of gaming out of it.
Yeah, that's true. And that's quite exciting. It's just such a great form factor, and it's been so great for emulation and retro gaming. It's always nice to have a little bit more power, because it means some of the newer titles will run without making even more compromises on the graphics.
A perhaps stupid question. How is the layout of the thumbsticks and the D-pad, or whatever the hell they call them, and those things? Is it different? Is there like a Steam sort of layout, or have they gone their own way?
Just looking at it, it looks like they've gone with the more traditional Xbox controller with the offset joysticks, the left joystick above the direction pad and the right joystick below the YXAB.
Okay.
The Steam Deck is similar, but this looks closer to the original Xbox controller. It's not got a touchpad, or it's got a tiny touchpad.
It has, but it's got a very small one.
Looks like less than a centimetre squared touchpad. And not quite so many buttons on the back, but I never use them, so that's no loss for me.
Yeah. I was just wondering, because, often with these kind of consoles, if you go with one of the big console providers, there's a whole load of testing that you have to do to make sure everything works the same way and you've got the right buttons in the right place. Just thought, I wonder if Valve are like that. I think probably not, but yeah, interesting nonetheless.
The most important thing is it looks like there's backlight LEDs behind the joystick, so,
Yeah.
I also don't like the Steam Deck speakers. I know they got good reviews, but I don't like them. I think they're too tinny, especially when, I'm sorry, but when you listen to like speakers in an iPad or a MacBook, they sound amazing. So I think there's a lot of room for improvement there.
Probably double the price of the console, though, if you actually put the same speakers in.
Yeah.
Well, either way, this is definitely good news for Linux gaming and therefore Linux in general, I think.
But don't worry, because Microsoft is going to combine the best of Xbox and Windows together for handhelds.
It's Steam CE.
There's some serious competition coming for SteamOS here.
I bet they're shitting themselves.
Oh, yeah.
I think the reason why most people have stayed with SteamOS on the Steam Deck, despite the fact that in theory they can play things like Fortnite and have better driver performance on Windows, is that the UI is just so good and it's only gotten better. And I just can't see Microsoft pulling that experience off on a handheld.
No, I agree. You look at the way that even Windows 10 has had all manner of things thrust into it against the user's wishes, or at least without asking the user if they wanted it. Things like Cortana and Copilot. This is eventually Microsoft will get to the point where they start pushing this stuff to their handheld OS and it will just cripple it. I think it's only a matter of time between when they release this thing and when it's basically unusable.
Ads in the start menu.
Well, what this says to me is that they see Linux and specifically SteamOS as competition to them. And it's forcing them to innovate in the way that Microsoft does. So we'll see if it's actually any good, but it is forced a reaction from them because Linux as a viable handheld gaming OS has really gathered pace and made a mark.
I think it will be impressive. I think the first version will come out and it will have amazing features and amazing games and an entire back catalogue of Xbox 360 games and cloud streaming and all kinds of clever tricks that only Microsoft are able to pull off. But I think that the veneer will wear thin very, very quickly. And before long, you'll be just left with this kind of crippled device that's got so much junk shoved on it that it's just not performant anymore. But we'll see.
Yeah, and an extra monthly subscription.
Oh, yeah.
All right, let's troll Félim. VLC Player demos real-time AI subtitling for videos. So it's been CES, and the VLC folks were there in quite funny costumes by the sounds of things. And they demoed this cool real-time AI subtitling thing. Félim, I dare you to find fault with this.
Well, I think you should put it in Father Ted, and then, you know, your man I Shot JR t-shirt, him talking into it, well, I know his real name is Patrick Short or whatever it was, he should then, and I'd like to see it do his subtitles.
Right. Not all videos have subtitles, and an AI attempt is better than nothing.
Is it?
Yes.
This feels a bit like that whole blind thing that we were talking about, where it's like telling you the wrong thing is better than just saying, I can't tell you, and then you can ask somebody else.
I would rather have I've had slightly dodgy subtitles that are written by humans.
All your base are belong to us.
Yeah, do not want instead of no, whatever, for Star Wars. Like, at least it gets the point across.
YouTube has had this for a long time, and the auto translation of foreign languages between each other, I have found to be quite useful. In fact, I found it useful this weekend when I was repairing a monitor, and the best video I could find was in, I guess, Russian, and the auto translation subtitles worked well enough to get me through it. So I think as a feature, which will run locally without sending that data to the cloud, assuming that's how it works, I don't know, is a pretty compelling feature. I don't know that I'd use it very often, but it certainly seems better than not having that option.
I agree. And Félim is wrong.
Look, if they didn't call it AI and they said it was, you know, some sort of advanced machine learning, then that'd be fine. It's when you jump on the bandwagon, that's the problem.
I agree to some extent, but they wouldn't have got the headlines if they hadn't used the term AI.
And then they would have been correct and small, and that's fine too.
Okay, this episode is sponsored by ServerMania. Go to servermania.com/LNL to get 15% off dedicated servers recurring for life. ServerMania is a Canadian company with over a decade of experience building high-performance infrastructure hosting platforms for businesses globally. ServerMania has up to 20 gigabits per second network speeds in 8 locations worldwide for optimized global reach. They have flexible custom server configurations tailored to unique needs, as well as a personal account manager offering free consultations. With 24/7 live chat support and support ticket response times under 15 minutes, you can always keep your systems running smoothly. Alan Jude from 2.5 Admins has been a happy ServerMania customer for over 7 years, so support the show and join him at a hosting provider that truly delivers. Get 15% off dedicated servers recurring for life at servermania.com/LNL and use code LateNightLinux. That's servermania.com/LNL and code LateNightLinux. Remembering and thanking Steve Langasek. This is a post on the Ubuntu discourse from Mark Shuttleworth, which is quite rare. And as the title suggests, Steve is no longer with us. And it's quite a touching tribute to him.
As you say, Mark doesn't post these kind of posts very often. He used to maintain a blog and post more kind of personal views more often. But Steve obviously was very important and referred to a lot of times as Mr. Ubuntu, and was really the technical leading hand behind the direction of the technology behind Ubuntu and Debian for a very long time. And the way that Mark has written this post is a really lovely and very considered and accurate reflection of Steve, the person, and the work that he did. And it's lovely to see this, and very sad occasion, but it's nice to be able to read some nice, friendly, well-written words.
I have seen a bit of concern in the community about the release process because Steve was so integral to that. And now that he's no longer with us, someone else is going to have to do a lot of the hard work that he was doing.
Yeah, they will have to, but they will pick it up. It's a great team. The release team has changed dramatically over the last 5 years or so. Lots of people have left, lots of new people have come along, but there are still people that have been there from when I was involved in it, sort of 5+ years ago. So there's some old hands there, but there's also a lot of new enthusiastic people. It will continue. It won't be the same, but it will continue.
All right, the WordPress fiasco rumbles on. So there's a post on the Automatic blog, that's the company behind WordPress, of course, by Mary Hubbard, aligning Automatic's sponsored contributions to WordPress, where they basically say that they're not going to be spending loads of money on the open source part of it anymore. They're going to redeploy those developers to the commercial features, the bits that make them some actual money. And this is aligned with what WP Engine are doing. And although Mary Hubbard wrote this, I've got a feeling that Matt Mullenweg may have had some slight influence, because on the WordPress.org blog, he wrote a post about a fork that he calls the Juiced Karim fork, and he goes on about how forking is great, but how he's deactivated 4 people's WordPress.org accounts, one of whom is Heather Burns, who hasn't had anything to do with the WordPress project for 5 years. And the people whose accounts have been deactivated say there is no fork. We just talked about changing the governance model here. And so Mullenweg has just got it in his head that there's a fork that's in the pipeline or is in the works somehow. And he's not acting like a rational person, I think it's fair to say. And there's an archive.org link that I'll put in the show notes from 2010 by Ben Cook, Why Matt Should Resign. And he talks about the conflict of interest between Automatic and the WordPress Foundation. And the comments are just priceless. They're all just talking about how this is nonsense and it's not going to be a problem. Well, here we are 14, 15 years later, and it has become a problem. Clearly, there is a problem with the governance of WordPress. And you've got one person who is supposedly a benevolent dictator for life. Well, the benevolent part has not really worked out, has it? It just shows to me that you need proper governance in open source projects, especially big ones.
It's interesting to me because I haven't really paid much attention to WordPress. It's just kind of always been there, and it's been popular and useful and a decent open source project and a good quality bit of software. And until all of this kicked off, I was unaware that there may be trouble at the top. And yet, here's evidence that it's been a bit off for 15 years. So I'm surprised it's kind of taken this long to come to the surface.
I do totally agree with you, though, Joe. I think we should accept that a benevolent dictator for life, if they're doing their job, should put in place the mechanisms for if the community no longer feels they're working for the best of the project.
Well, the argument there is just fork it. But as we've seen with LibreOffice, the momentum is still with OpenOffice all these years later. Normal people still think that OpenOffice is the way to go and they've never heard of LibreOffice. But you're right. If you are truly benevolent, then you should set up a proper governance structure. I mean, you can understand when an open source project gets started and it's small and there's only 1 or 2 people involved with it, you sort of don't need it. But as it grows, especially to the size of WordPress that's running a significant chunk of the web, at some point in the last 15, 20 years, this should have been sorted out. But clearly he didn't want it to be sorted out.
No. I think the Python project's been very good, and Guido van Rossum has done a good job at recognizing that it's not an ego thing, it's about the project.
Yeah.
I was just trying to think about the point that you made about LibreOffice. I agree with you, but the part of the problem is that LibreOffice is such a terrible name.
Yeah.
Shots fired.
Yeah, we all just sort of take it for granted because it's installed on loads of distros by default and it's just the default. But a normal person, OpenOffice is just such an easy name. I mean, it's always a bit weird with the OpenOffice.org part of it and that always was a bit weird. But OpenOffice just trips off the tongue. But like LibreOffice, LibreOffice, you know, it is a terrible name.
Thanks, Apache Foundation, for keeping the old OpenOffice thing going when it's clearly a dead project and it should be a redirector.
Definitely.
My memory's a bit hazy on this, but isn't that exactly what the Document Foundation and LibreOffice tried to do 5 or 6, 7 years ago?
Yeah, they did.
Well, repeatedly. I saw them the other day posting on Mastodon about it and how there's, you know, potentially serious security vulnerabilities that haven't been fixed in OpenOffice. But the longer this rumbles on, this WordPress shit, the worse it looks for open source generally. So it needs to get sorted out.
I think it just makes WordPress look like a shit show, to be quite honest. And I think anybody who's using it should start looking somewhere else. Start moving to a thing like Jekyll or whatever, or Pelican or the likes. I think it's had its day, and this is a sign of that.
I can see the argument for it having had its day and static site generators and all the rest of it. But that doesn't change the fact that a massive chunk of the web runs on it.
Yeah, but they should stop.
They should stop. That's like saying that a lot of businesses should just stop using Windows.
And my work here is done, and away I go.
Yes, because life is that simple, Félim.
I have said it. Let it be written.
You'd think that you would understand something about technical debt, if only from our friend Graham here with his CentOS 5 server, whatever it is.
It's running fine. I don't know what you're talking about.
Okay, this episode is sponsored by Tailscale. Go to tailscale.com/LNL. Tailscale is the easiest way to connect devices and services to each other, wherever they are. Everyone these days has a VPN as a sponsor, but Tailscale isn't like those. This isn't about hiding your browsing habits from coffee shop owners, and it's not about watching Netflix in another country. Tailscale is a proper VPN for connecting your devices securely. It's great for companies, and it's great for self-hosters. Tailscale is incredibly easy to set up. I got it up and running on 2 machines in just a few minutes, without opening any ports. Then I could SSH from one machine to another as if they were on the same LAN, even though they were on different sides of London. Tailscale is WireGuard on easy mode, and that's why loads of the Late Night Linux family hosts use it. Tailscale's personal plan will always be free, so support the show and try Tailscale out for free today. You'll get up to 100 devices and 3 users for free at tailscale.com/LNL with no credit card required. That's tailscale.com/LNL. 16GB Raspberry Pi 5 on sale now at $120.
It's a bargain, Joe.
Too rich for me.
So I had a look on Pimeroni, and so if you buy the 16GB Pi, the official power supply and the official case,
Here we go.
you're looking at £135.60, which is quite a lot of money, isn't it? And so the question I have is, who is this for?
I don't know, because you're not doing it right if you're using 16 gigabytes on a Pi.
The Pi community is enormous, and the following that they have are dedicated and excited by the new products that come out. I think that somewhere along the way, the path kind of diverged, and some people went one way and used the Pi as a hardware platform, and some of the people use the Pi as a general purpose computer. And those people there's plenty of them, and they're still excited and interested in using the Pi as a computer. And for those guys, this is really relevant and interesting and useful. I just think that it's not where I went down the first path, I think, and it's just kind of lost interest for me now. Too expensive.
It's too expensive for this one, but you don't have to buy this one if you're doing things like we might like to do with it.
It seems to occupy a strange spot between too expensive for the top of the range one and not useful enough for the cheaper ones. Whereas, I'm sure we'll hear in a minute, you could buy something way more powerful that is able to achieve both those use cases.
Go on then, Joe. Tell us what cupboard fire that you've bought this time.
Well, I decided to put my money where my mouth was. And so I looked on Amazon. I was very annoyed that I didn't pull the trigger on that £99 N100 mini PC.
And why is that? What happened? Did that company fold or something within 24 hours? Is that what happened?
No, it was so popular that it sold out on Amazon.
Right.
And so that it's no longer available.
So would you be able to get follow-up service to the broken piece of kit that arrives there? Oh, no, wait, they're gone. Isn't that right? They're gone.
I don't know if they're gone, but you can't buy that one anymore.
Right.
But I bought a Trig Key mini
good.
PC.
Well-known brand.
Mm-hmm. With 16 gigabytes of RAM, which was actually in a slot, which was a pleasant surprise. 2 gigabit Ethernet ports, 2 HDMI ports, Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, a 500 gig SSD, a case, no power supply because the power supply is inside it. So you just need a figure of 8 cable plugged into it, which is a nice touch.
So no earth then. Okay, good.
For £145. Now that is slightly more than a Pi and a case and a power supply, but this has got an SSD in it. This has got storage. So you're not going to get storage for less than 10 quid, are you, for a Pi? So it's basically the same price as the 16 gig Pi. I also bought an NVMe adapter for the Pi because I thought, let's put this on a level-ish playing field, because running the Pi from an SD card, that's just madness. Running it over USB is not ideal. Let's see what this NVMe like is all about. And so then I tried to use both of these machines as just day-to-day computers, desktop computers. Now, the Pi is definitely better with an NVMe drive, no doubt in my mind. It's a better experience. I would say it's essential if you're going to use it as a desktop. However, it was still a relatively unpleasant experience. I could just about get done what I had to do, but I was putting the show doc together and reading the news and everything with it, and I just got really frustrated. I was like, right, fuck this, turned it off, turned the N100 back on, and that is a pleasure to use. It is a pleasant experience. And also, you can actually run Ubuntu on this N100 if you want to, and it works really well. And on the Pi, you're basically going to want to use Chromium because Firefox is installed, but it's just a shit experience compared to Chromium. So you're basically stuck using Raspberry Pi OS and Chromium if you want the best desktop experience. Whereas with this mini PC, I happen to want Ubuntu. Félim, you would obviously want to put Neon on there.
No. I would use no GUI because it's daft.
No, if you were going to use this as a desktop PC, you would put Neon on it, and because it's Intel and x86, you could do that and you would have a pleasant experience on it.
But you know what you haven't done, though? You haven't factored in €45 for a powder fire extinguisher. Because that thing's going to go on fire.
These things are produced to a pattern which is probably defined by Intel. I think they're just cookie-cutter copies of each other. I think they'll be perfectly safe.
Okay.
But I return to my question, who is the 16 gigabyte Pi for? It makes no sense to me. Either you're doing makery stuff and you don't need 16 gigabytes, or you're using it as some sort of server, like say you've got a shitload of Docker images on there or VMs even. Well, why the fuck are you doing it on a Pi when you should be doing it on a mini PC that's got an x86 processor? The only three things that make it make sense to me is if you are incredibly tight on space and you need the small form factor, okay, fair enough. Or you are running it off some sort of battery and power consumption is really important to you, or you need the GPIO. I will admit that they make sense. And so for a lot of the project type stuff, yeah, a Pi makes sense, but not a 16 gig RAM Pi. That just makes no sense to me.
I agree. I don't think the 16 gig makes sense either. But if people are using them for desktops, there is a lot to be said for the fact that will be around for years to come and has an entire massive ecosystem behind it.
What, an x86 doesn't?
No, it doesn't for expander things like GPIO and things like that. You just don't have the same length of lifetime with that because it's a fire away thing.
Yeah, but I'm talking about the kind of person who would listen to this show and would want to use it as in a home lab, not necessarily connecting anything to the GPIO. Like I said, if you need that, you can do that via USB, but it's better in a Pi, obviously. But if you're doing like some sort of Plex or Jellyfin server, or like I said, just a load of Docker containers, whatever, the N100 makes so much more sense. Now, the one argument could be, well, I don't want to pay the huge power bill because, let me give you some numbers. The Pi 5 with the NVMe drive idles at about 3.5 watts, and I saw it peak at 9 watts. This little N100 box idles at about 6.7, so significantly more, and the peak I saw was 26.9. So I did some maths on that, and based on the current price cap for electricity in the UK, how much more, if it was idling 24/7, 365, would it cost you to run the N100 versus the Pi 5? £8.71 a year. I would happily pay the £8.71 to have a capable machine versus a Pi, which is, we've not even talked about the incompatibility with ARM, which has got a lot better, but is still something to think about. There is certain software that you can't get for ARM still.
But you're talking about spending £8 extra on a compatibility, but if you've spec'd it out and you know that applies what you want, there should be no compatibility problem.
Right, but I'm saying like this 16 gig Pi just makes no sense to me. Who is it for? Who is it for?
I don't know. I mean, maybe there is something for for instance, I'm processing video with one, right? It's a security camera effectively, and I use a Pi 4 for it. Pi 5 may help with the fact of because I have to get it in the native format that comes off the camera, and I have to convert it into a file that a PC can read, and that happens in the background. Maybe that can happen better. I don't know, but I can't imagine 16 gigabytes of RAM is required. I've never bought a Pi that has more than 2.
Right, exactly.
Another feather in the cap of your mini PC is that one you link to has got USB 3.2. Well, according to the specs, it has got 3 USB 3.2 ports, whereas the Pi 5 has got 2 USB 3.0 ports and 2 USB 2 ports. So way more USB bandwidth, and the vast majority of things you plug in are USB these days. So that seems like a massive benefit.
I think where the sweet spot that Pi seems to be hitting these days is the zeros or zero Ws, whichever, or the 2 versions. That and the old Pis. I think Pi 3B Plus, I think it was pretty peak sort of Pi. I mean, the 4 was pretty good when it has gigabyte internet, which for me, from a camera, makes a difference because it's got a local hard drive that it writes to. But if you need to pull anything off it, like it was painful when it was Pi 3. Yeah, I don't know. I think they maybe should have tried to work on getting things cheaper rather than getting things faster.
Yeah.
Yeah, because at this price, it's starting to be in the mini PC range. And so it just makes no sense for a lot of applications to me.
Okay, I don't agree with you in the fact that mini PCs are their own thing. They don't sort of compete with a Pi for me, but also you might be right, but I also don't agree with you. So there.
Well, I think we're missing the whole Raspberry Pi Foundation perspective. I assume they know what they're doing, and I assume they're trying to satisfy demand for a 16 gig version. And I assume it's out there, and it's just not for the things that you're talking about. It's not for people who are trying to find the cheapest computer they can run, or the lowest wattage computer they can run, or a home server. And it's not, as you say, anymore the cheapest kind of platform we can do our own little home automation stuff on. It seems to be we've lost touch with what the Raspberry Pi has become and what the Foundation is trying to attract.
Turns out there's an ML board that, when it has that much memory, can then do a whole lot of processing that they can stick one on every lamppost and follow us around the place.
Well, yeah, certainly everything's 16 gig when you talk. I don't want to trigger Félim, but yeah, 16 gig's like the minimum amount you need for that kind of thing.
Okay, this episode is sponsored by Automox. Are you prepared for whatever shitstorm may hit your desk during the workday? Automox has your back. Check out the brand new Autonomous IT podcast. Listen in as various IT experts discuss the latest Patch Tuesday releases, mitigation tips, and custom automations to help with CVE remediations. Make new work friends. Listen now to the Autonomous IT podcast on Spotify, Apple, or wherever you tune into your podcasts. On to a bit of admin then. First of all, thank you everyone who supports us with PayPal and Patreon. We really do appreciate that. If you want to join those people, you can go to latenightlinux.com/support. And remember that for various amounts on Patreon, you can get an advert-free RSS feed of either just this show or all the shows in the Late Night Linux family. And you even get some episodes early. And if you want to get in contact, you can email show@latenightlinux.com. Linux Foundation announces the launch of supporters of Chromium-based browsers. Now, I don't know about you, but I think Chromium-based browsers really could do with a leg up in the world, couldn't they?
I think so. I mean, they haven't quite achieved 100% just yet.
Yeah. Let's fully stamp out Gecko, shall we?
If only there were some big web companies that could fund them a little bit more.
Oh, let's not go there.
Too late.
This is a terrible, terrible idea. It's fucking awful. It is literally like nails in the coffin here. The last thing we needed was the Chromium guys to get even more organized.
I know. Like, what is the Linux Foundation doing? I'm sure it will do its job of progressing and supporting the Chromium browser ecosystem, but it fucking doesn't need it. Help Mozilla out for fuck's sake. Or Servo even. Because I think it was you, Félim, put this link in Servo Revival 2023 to 2024. Because there's a company called Igalia who took over maintenance of Servo. And this is a genuine independent browser engine, which I actually checked out, and it's sort of works.
How did you install it? That's the only thing that annoyed me about this. There was 2 ways to install it, and I didn't know which one was the better one. It was all Rust, and I didn't care. I
grabbed the tarball, I think it was, or zip file, and extracted it and ran the binary.
Oh, okay, right. Shit, I missed that. I only found 2 ways to build it from source. Okay, well, that's a fail from my side.
And yeah, you could get to our website and look at it and read it. Bold didn't seem to be supported, and yeah, good luck trying to play back an MP3 in it. But it did render a web page, so it is technically a browser engine. But yeah, shit like that is what they should be supporting, not fucking Chromium. Fuck's sake.
It is a bit mind-boggling, to be quite honest.
Yeah, it goes against everything that the Linux Foundation has stood for.
Does it, though?
No. That was supposed to be sarcastic.
Just wanted to be absolutely clear there.
I mean, it's just, we've always said the name is Newspeak, the Linux Foundation.
I was going to read that over Christmas. Did I fuck?
Very disappointing ending, I thought.
Oh, don't ruin it. I haven't read it yet.
Well, that's all I'll tell you. I thought the ending was disappointing.
Still, we get George Orwell on a stamp thanks to the Labour government.
Oh, crap. We haven't talked about the AI bullshit that they're pushing now. What could fix the potholes in the roads? Could it be funding more teams to go out and fix the No, AI. That's what we need, to look at the cameras and identify where the potholes are. That'll help.
Do you know, that sounds like that needs 16 gigabytes of memory and a Raspberry Pi attached to your camera.
Yep, great idea.
There we go.
Right, well, we better get out of here then. We'll be back next week when we've got an exciting chat with Molly White. You don't want to miss that one. But until then, I've been Joe.
I've been Félim.
I've been Graham.
And I've been Will.
See you later.